All right, guys, welcome in to another episode of GC Live, Monday version of the show, talking South Carolina scrimmage. Going to talk some South Carolina football overall preseason, just topics and takeaways and everything as we are now 12 days away to kickoff. GC Live, as always, brought to you by our good buddy Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans. Going to tell you about Clint and all the great things he's doing here in a moment. Also, want to welcome in our newest sponsor presenting today's show as well, our friends at Modelo. College football season is Modelo season, and we're excited to have the official beer sponsor of the college football playoff with us throughout this college football season. Looking forward to telling you a little bit more about them later on, too. But first, Clint is our guy in terms of mortgages here in Columbia and the surrounding areas throughout South Carolina. And even beyond that, Chris, I always tell everybody, if you're not in the market to buy a home right now, and you may not be. Many people probably are not right this moment, but one day when you are, we just ask you to give Clint a chance to earn your business. 803-422-6797. The NMLS number is 71597, clinthammond.com. And the beauty of it is, even if you're not at that spot in your life right now, if that is a future goal for you, you can go ahead and sit down with Clint. It's going to be a completely free consultation. He'll walk you through the entire process of getting a mortgage for home ownership. What are you going to owe off the top? What might you owe in your monthly payments? And just help you get towards, working towards those goals. So shout out, as always, to our guy, Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans.
And before we get into the preseason talk, Wes, we'll also tell you about Ferry Chevrolet, Fairey, Chevrolet.com, 803-937-4531. A fourth-generation dealer in Joseph Ferry still running the show over there. And so if you've been considering, hey, it's about time to get a newer used vehicle, a new to me, as I like to say, vehicle, you can check out Ferry Chevrolet. Financing options, check out their new and used inventory, get your questions answered directly from their website, ferrychevrolet.com, located in Orangeburg. Since 1926, go check them out, ferrychevrolet.com.
All right, let's get down to it, man. A big topic of conversation in Gamecock Nation right now, as one would expect, is the scrimmage. Already plenty of intel for our Gamecock Central / the Big Spur subscribers on the website. Hopefully you're already signed up. If not, we're going to dive into some things from that. Chris, we wondered, hey, how much will we hear about the defense possibly punching back this week? We know they already kind of answered the offense a little bit in sort of what you would call the second half of the first scrimmage. And, I think we all maybe wondered, hey, is this something where the offense has another really strong showing to kick this thing off, just in terms of like setting the tone for the day? Or do we hear that the defense is going to set the tone for this one? Certainly sounds like, once again, if you want to like be completely like accurate about it, I think much like with scrimmage 1, scrimmage 2, it wasn't that it was dominated by one side necessarily. There was some balance. There was some big plays from the offense from what we've heard. There were plays made, but I think, to be fair, like, we've heard enough to where it certainly sounds like the defense kind of set the tone for this day and was able to really kind of, I don't even say bounce back, but at least just kind of answer the way the offense started in scrimmage number 1.
Yeah, but some balance in both of them. But the takeaway, according to everything we heard from scrimmage 1, was if you had to pick a side of the ball, who won that thing, right? It would be the offense. This time around, it's the defense who, as you said, kind of rebounded in the back half of scrimmage 1 and started making more things happen. And it seems like that's what took place in scrimmage 2, basically right out of the gate, right? The thing that we heard specifically about the defense is the tone was really set, I think, by the defensive line. And that's a group that, even without Dylan Stewart, one of the strengths of this team is thought to be, and Stewart's obviously an edge, right? But the strength of the team is thought to be beginning with those defensive tackles. The staff feels like that's maybe their strongest position on the roster. It's certainly one of their deeper, more experienced rooms. And one of their more talented rooms, especially when you factor in someone like a freshman in Noah Clark, who, despite the guys ahead of him with more talent and experience, looks to be in line to play. So we heard that group was very, very active throughout the day on Saturday. We heard Jasavian Currance's name, Wes, come up yet again. He's someone that's been a buzzworthy name, really dating back to the spring, but that seemed to carry over into the spring and now into preseason camp and 2 scrimmages as well. So there were some good things, offensively and defensively, but it was Clayton White's group who seemed to get the better of this one. And I think, man, we've talked about this, after scrimmage 1, kind of previewing scrimmage 2. What do you want to see? What do you make of it? I think you like hearing some of that back and forth. You wouldn't want to go through a whole preseason. Hey, the offense dominated everything. Hey, the defense dominated everything. It seems like you've got 2 scrimmages. One side of the ball kind of was deemed to win one, the other side of the ball deemed to win the other, but some good stuff and certainly some stuff to improve upon in both of those phases now through 2 scrimmages.
Yeah, I don't really think you ever want complete dominance in scrimmage setting, man. I really don't. And that would be something where I don't know if you ever necessarily get entirely concerned about what we hear out of a scrimmage, because I don't know how much it truly tells you about how a team is going to perform once you have other opponents out there. But if we were just hearing complete dominance from either side, I think you would start to worry a little bit about that other side of the ball. Defensive line, I thought it was interesting, Chris, that Beamer kind of looped even the D line into his kind of long answer last week on Tuesday when he was talking about the areas that are still kind of a little bit up for grabs. And, he did make a point to say that, hey, some of the it's like at a different spot on the mythical depth chart in some of the spots where it's like, we may have guys fighting for a starting role, such as at kicker. In the and when we're talking D-line right now, we're more talking about interior D-line, defensive tackle. And he looped them in, but it was more along the lines of, okay, we know we've got a lot of guys here who can play. It almost sounded to me like, all right, where are we going to draw that line? Is it going to be primarily like 4 guys and the 5th and 6th will play, if we're up big, certain situations, stuff like that? Or is it going to be a true 6-man rotation? Is there a 7th man that could play in this thing? Aiden Harris, we talked about it on our radio show today. He's not going away either, it sounds like. So, I think that's a fascinating aspect to it. It sounds like, man, all those guys had pretty good days and sort of made their presence felt. I think I think Tomiwa and Gabe Brownlow-Dendy, I mean, I don't know about you. I'd be pretty shocked. Like, I'd be pretty surprised if they're not in the starting lineup game 1 and really probably for most of the season. We'll have to see how everything plays out. But dude, I think if you start getting behind that group, Travis brings up Kelby Collins. Kelby's going to be firmly in the rotation, no doubt. I think he's probably in that next line of guys up, but who knows, man? Like, I think the battle to kind of be on the second group and on the third group, it could change by the week potentially, I think, once the season gets rolling.
Yeah, it seems like a good problem to have. And of course, there's an element, like so many things with this team, where a lot of it is on paper, right? Because you're bringing some new guys into the program that have not played for you, have not played in your scheme. When you're talking about a Noah Clark, he has never taken a collegiate snap, right? But you're also getting feedback. You try, Wes, we try our very best when we hear things to figure out, is what you're hearing trustworthy? Where is it coming from? Are you hearing things? If you hear positive things, are there also some negative things to where you can go, all right, we can balance this out and know that the positive is truly positive and that it can like stand up, to scrutiny. We've heard so much about this defensive line and just the depth that the staff believes that they have that it's hard to ignore, right? You have a lot of experience. I mean, you mentioned Gabe Brownlow-Dendy. Does he have to take a leap to be what you think he can be? Yes, but the returns have been really good this preseason. He's a former 5-star. He's talented. Tell me why. He's in his 5th year of college football. He's played a lot. Staff thinks he's a really good scheme fit. He's played some really quality snaps over his career. Kelby Collins played at 2 different SEC schools, has played quite well when he's played, and on and on. So there's a lot of experience in this group. There's a lot of, I think, versatility in different body types. And it's certainly a good thing for the conversation, because we've seen the other side of this conversation. We've seen times in the past where you're going, I'm not really sure about the starters, or, hey, you feel decent about the starters. Who's behind those guys? There are some positions on this team where you could talk about that, right? Talked about corner depth, talk about safety depth. But when you talk about the defensive line, what you get back is typically, hey, they feel like there's a lot of guys that can play and legitimately play, pull down snaps. And so that's something they're going to have to figure out. How do they handle that rotation? But that buzz about this group has continued throughout the preseason. And it looks like a group that could really help set the tone defensively throughout the entire year.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's not bury the lead either from the other kind of just big actual newsworthy thing from the weekend. That's the addition of Ethan Johnson from App State, defensive back who signed with South Carolina on Saturday morning, and is one of the guys who was among the 16 players who got a TRO to not only play, but also enter the transfer portal and also be able to transfer elsewhere without that school or coach being punished. So that was completely separate, worth mentioning, than the Colorado case, which initially gave everybody from that 2022 high school class an extra year of eligibility, but changed nothing else. So at the time when that happened, those guys and girls, because it was every sport, were then given an extra year, basically. They were given the 5th year they never got. Well, the NCAA won a stay in that court battle. So now everybody is ineligible again, and to be determined on what happens with that. This deal, and those guys could not enter the transfer portal, worth mentioning. The 16 that Ethan was involved with, that DQ Smith, for that matter, was involved with, they were able to enter the portal. He did so last week, signed with South Carolina on Saturday. And Chris, I think if we add together Beamer's comments from last Tuesday about the competitions, add together what we've heard about the battle really behind Judge Collier and Vakari Swain, and then you look at the experience level that Ethan Johnson has at App State, it does make a lot of sense why South Carolina would make this move.
Yeah, I think, we're just talking about a position where South Carolina feels really good. I think corner is not the direct opposite, right? Because from a starter standpoint, it seems like they feel pretty solid with Vakari Swain and Judge Collier, but corner depth has both publicly and even just according to what we've heard and picked up, it is a concern, right? And the biggest part of that is the youth at that position. The youth, the inexperience, behind Judge and Vakari, you've got DeMarcus Leach, who's a sophomore who did play last year as a true freshman, including game 1, but playing a position that he had never played up until college. Kudos to him and to Torian Gray for getting him ready enough to play last year, right? But still inexperienced, still a year 2 player. Cassie Barnes has been in the mix for that spot. True freshman. If you go through the rest, Jalewis Solomon has not been, I think it's fair to say, as consistent as desired. Now, he's had some injuries and things like that. Zabari Sandy, he's had a couple of knee injuries since he's been at South Carolina. Then you look at Tristan Lewis, KJ Johnson, 2 true freshmen, and KJ didn't enroll until the summer. So a lot of youth at that spot. And Shane Beamer has publicly talked about, hey, who is going to win that third corner job? We're not really sure. So here's a situation where you can be resourceful and you can say, hey, Ethan Johnson's in the portal. This guy's from Huff High School, a school South Carolina recruits, school where South Carolina knows a lot of people, trusted people. Got 2 commits that are playing at Huff High School this year. Ethan Johnson played all 4 years at App. Didn't transfer, stuck it out, right? But getting that 5th year because of this court case. Played about 3,000 snaps or so during his career at App State. And so a guy that they feel like can come in and, one of the big things this offseason, get older, get more experienced. If that's your goal, here's a corresponding move that makes a lot of sense to get older. And so, yes, you're bringing them in very late. Game day is less than 2 weeks away. He'll have to get with the team, get acclimated. He'll have to learn the scheme, all that. But apparently, it's a really sharp kid. Played a lot of football in his time. So really a no risk, potentially high reward move to make here.
Yeah, and Chris, I think like worth mentioning, defense is at the college level, it's not like high school, and it's not even like defenses used to be 20, 30 years ago where it's like, all right, here, here's my assignment. I have to sit in zone in this coverage, and this is just what I'm supposed to do. And there's carryover, cover 3 is cover 3 and cover 2 is cover 2. I mean, there's a lot to some of these schemes these days. And, it's not necessarily that simple. If you look at around the college football landscape, the defense has kind of caught up with the offenses over the last few years compared to, when the offenses first started going spread, no huddle, and we're just going up and down the field on the defenses. So there will be an adjustment there, I'm sure, but kind of talking to, you talking to a source there about him, just how much of a film guy he is, how smart he is, that many snaps at App State. Probably won't be a direct carryover from that system, but I do think that's a pretty positive sign too, in terms of his ability to like pick all this stuff up pretty quickly.
Yeah. Way he was described to me was a guy that, is going to just provide a lift to not only that room, but the locker room in general. That's something that South Carolina talks about a lot. Like even in the NIL transfer era, like you think about the Portal West, you got in the portal window, what is it, 10 days now? Call it 2 weeks, right? A week or two where it's fast and furious, it's speed dating. You're finding out, okay, who do we like? What do we need? Who do we like there? What's the NIL number? Bring them on campus, see if it works out. But we've even heard some anecdotes of kids that South Carolina brought in, said, hey, really like this guy as a player, not a great fit for us, as a program. And that stuff does, I think, still matter. You do have to try to work that out as much as you can. And so the reason I bring that up, Ethan Johnson, according to multiple people I've talked to, just a really good addition from that standpoint, but also a good football player. The way it was described to me, good football player, even better person, but someone who really likes to grind out the film, described to me as a potential like future coach type. And as an experienced player, that's what you like in this room. Does he end up being that third corner? He'll have every opportunity to win it. If he's not, is he just a nice, steady veteran presence that you can bring into that room to help the young guys, give you some depth, play special teams? Yeah, that might be the case too. So kind of goes back to like the low risk type thing. You're bringing in a guy late and you basically just see what happens. And I think it was a resourceful get for South Carolina because we've now seen them, Wes, kind of use this. They haven't pulled a guy from an NFL team yet. Maybe, I don't know if that's coming, but they've used the portal window. They got a couple transfers in late. Remember Vincent Chin at O-line, Malik Orson at kicker. Those were like April, May gets. And now you got this court case. Hey, we need somebody there to add competition. Let's go grab this guy.
Yeah, and we'll see what we pick up on how quickly he picks everything up, but certainly really no downside to making that move, I don't think. And all right, dude, let's get into some other things from the scrimmage and some things we've heard over the last week or so. This is not new, but sometimes things fizzle out, dude, and sometimes you just get more and more confirmation on things. And man, I think those 5 freshmen that we've been talking about really since kind of right before camp started, I think we added Darius Gray and Sequel Patterson into those conversations right before camp started. And then once preseason camp kind of got rolling, it kind of got confirmed more and more. Okay, even though they got here late, they're going to be a big part of what South Carolina does, right? Well, the guys on defense, Currents, Julian Walker, Noah Clark, not going away. If anything, they've been coming on even stronger. And I think there's maybe a guy or two beyond that 5 where you could be looking at playing this year. But those 5, man, like we just keep hearing about them making plays, not just in practice, but it sounds like another strong scrimmage for those guys on Saturday as well.
Yeah, they've only strengthened their cases, I think, and I'll start with Patterson, because most of South Carolina's freshman class enrolled early. There are a couple guys on that list of 5 that you just gave that were summer enrollees, and they were, of course, Darius Gray and Sequel Patterson. Patterson being maybe the most interesting of those because he enrolled a year early, skipped a senior year of high school, reclassed, and when I say enrolled early, a year early, but then did not get here in January, right? Jordan Gidron last year, he pulled the full 1.5 years early, like I'm graduating early and enrolling early. So Sequel, didn't enroll until the summer, but also still young for his age. And so I think that creates a couple things. Number one, you didn't have a senior year of development in high school. Number two, you missed winter workouts. You missed, several months of just acclimating to like, okay, I'm a college football player, a student athlete. You missed spring ball. And then you kind of jump in like in the middle, summer workouts, and here comes preseason camp. And so I don't think athletically there were many questions on Sequel Patterson coming in, but I also think he kind of blew even whatever the expectations were out of the water. Like came into summer workouts, really impressed with how he moves, player run practices, feedback was really good there. Catches the ball naturally, smooth, can run, quick, elusive, all that stuff. But the question becomes when the pads come on and now you're fully in the playbook, you're playing 11 on 11 padded football, how is a guy going to react? And that's anybody. That's not unique to Sequel Patterson. And so that was my question. But apparently, Wes, boxes continue to be checked there, right? One of the things we heard in the scrimmage from multiple people, like, hey, Sequel Patterson, 23, he's going to be a player. He's making people miss. He looks smooth. He looks natural. So he's only continued his buzz. I mean, really, same for all those guys that you mentioned. It's really been a consistent theme with all those guys that they have continued to play well in preseason and show some things that lead you to believe they're going to help. And I think the roles for those guys, there might be like there's levels, So there might be a guy or two in there that ends up being a starter. The others might just contribute, but if they do, they'll make meaningful contributions. And it seems like they're all in that category.
I'm going to throw a question out there. I don't know if you or I will give an answer to it yet. Maybe the chat can weigh in.
Yeah, for sure.
Among the 5, will any of them start game 1?
Ooh.
I have 2 of them that I think maybe wouldn't start if it was today, but I think are coming on strong for that. And my 2 that I think would have the absolute best shot would be Jazavian Currents and would be Julian Walker. And with Walker, that's also because the obvious that Dylan Stewart is not expected to be out there game 1. So, I not that Julian has been with the ones. I think that's been, I think that's, man, I heard somebody tell me again, like, this Anthony Addison kid does not get talked about enough. Like, he's out there just 1,000 miles an hour every single play. And, we've projected Caleb Herring to be, more than like, he was brought in, let's call it what it is. He was like brought in to come in and earn that starting role opposite of Dylan Stewart. Like that's why you're recruiting a guy like that from Tennessee, just to be frank. Well, I think those guys have a great shot at it. Julian, I would think more than likely probably rolls out there with that second group game 1. But dude, Currents, you just start to hear as the scrimmages have started. It was interesting, Chris. I heard middle of last week that Currents had a play in scrimmage 1 where he read a ball, like ran, I don't know how many yards, but basically chased down a deep ball and almost made like a spectacular interception, but it was more of like an incomplete pass. It was like, I think guys maybe collided or something. And, it's like, okay, good play, almost like a great play. And then you hear scrimmage 2, and I don't know if we weren't there. I don't know if they were like similar plays or not, but you hear that he made a great play on a ball and picked a pass off. And, it just sounds to me like that guy's coming on. Not that he wasn't before. He's been coming on since he arrived. I'm reading between the lines a little bit on this one, though. I just kind of have a feel he might be coming on even more. That goes a little bit to that alpha mindset that we always have talked about, which is Xavier Current. So, Coleman Johnson and Golfing True here, they make a pretty good point as well. Darius Gray with Peak out. And, I do think there's something there, because what if you just say, okay, we expect Peak to be back. He's going to, his rehab is going really, really well. He's going to be back in there. What if you said, let's roll the kid out there? Because we have heard Darius, there was a lot of talk about right tackle with Darius, but Kendall Briles told Chris Lowe for that piece he did that Darius has been playing lots of left tackle as well. So if you trust the kid enough, you could roll him out there at left tackle and, Shed or Dane Arnett at right tackle. And then it would almost allow you to change as few things as possible when Peak gets back in there. Now, Gray could be so good even as a true freshman that he plays so well the first 2 games that forces you to make some moves to keep him on the field. But like there is something to be said for, hey, let's roll this freshman out there against a Kent State, no disrespect intended, and see how he performs in front of 80,000 people and then go from there, as opposed to the easing him in and all this stuff. And if it works out as planned, you just slide Peak right in, and now Darius is a very important depth piece for you, with the knowledge that he's probably going to get a shot in there at some point later on when somebody gets dinged up.
Yeah. No, I like it. I mean, where my head went when you first asked the question is I would lean towards none of the true freshmen starting game 1, just because, and to be clear, I don't know. I don't think either of us, Wes, have been told. I won't speak for you. I have not been told, yeah, so-and-so starting game 1. I don't think the staff, quite frankly, has decided that with some of these true freshmen. Obviously, there's some spots where the starter. There's several spots where you don't, even if a true freshman's not involved. So I think that's an interesting way to think about it. Like, does the staff say, hey, it's game 1. We got Kent State and Towson, like you said, no disrespect intended. Let's roll the guys out there and see how they perform. But you also have the flip side of, you have some older guys who have earned it, who have been around here, play them, integrate the freshmen into the game, let them play meaningful snaps early. Might look out there, drive 3, drive 4, and you've got some freshmen out there on offense and defense. I tend to think that's the direction they'll go, but do I know that? No, absolutely not. And there's more practices to go that will give the staff a better idea of exactly how they're going to handle that. But I tend to think like all 5 of those guys play a lot. I think there's levels. I think there's a guy or two on that list that sometime after game 1 could become a starter. If I had to take an estimated guess on what I think, that's probably where I would go.
Yeah, and hey, the beauty of it is, man, they got really 12 days right now. Don't practice today. 11 days from tomorrow. You probably have a week, actually. Like, you probably have this week to earn a starting role, in my opinion. Like, I don't. You really want to go into next week, if you're the staff, knowing which guys you're rolling out there in game 1. So You had the second scrimmage. You got to practice. You know, the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday practice this week are incredibly important, I think, for these guys in terms of locking down starting roles. All right, man. Let's what's that say? Then again,
Dylan Stewart didn't start against ODU. Good point.
yeah,
He's sure in there the next week. So you never know.
Coleman wants to know when Beamer puts out the depth chart. They have at times done it like Monday or Tuesday before game one. Last year, we had an intern assigned to watching pregame warm-ups, basically walkthroughs. So, and then they did put one out on that following, I guess, Monday or Tuesday. That was a representative of what you had seen on Sunday in this case. So we'll see. I did hear somebody maybe ask or mention that this offseason behind the scenes, and I think it was a to be determined in terms of that. Sandlapper says, is DQ going somewhere else? Is it possible that he comes back? All signs, I would say it like this, all signs are that he will be going elsewhere. He did also enter the transfer portal yesterday, which was the next step in that. Jeff wants to know, what do we know about Kent State? Tell you what, Chris, let's do a little early, just quick preview of Kent State here in a moment. But first, you got that poncho shirt over there, man?
I do have the poncho shirt.
Hold that bad boy up, because they have their game day shirts available now. The ultimate performance shirt for outdoors. It is your go-to shirt for all seasons, the best looking and most comfortable shirt you can own. Check out the game day collection, now available, of course, with South Carolina Gamecocks logos. And if you buy the game day shirt right now, between August 2nd through September 7th, you're covered by Poncho's Natty Back Guarantee. If your team wins the College Football National Championship, Poncho is going to give you a full refund on your purchase and, of course, let you keep the shirt. They have short sleeves. They have long sleeves. They have small sizes all the way up to 3XL. You haven't dialed your size yet. It is a breeze. You can send it back and swap it out. Chris, how's that thing feel?
It's amazing. I mean, when they say it's the most comfortable shirt, it really is. Like, the material is tremendous. And, as we know, Wes, gets pretty hot when you're out at Willie B watching football games. This guy right here, this will cool you down. This is not like a heavy shirt. It's got this material. It is awesome. But extremely well made.
If you want to be like Chris and get you that very shirt, head on over to ponchooutdoors.com/Gamecock Central. Of course, whenever we can possibly help it, guys, we want for our reads to be able to provide something for you as well. So if you go to that website, enter your email, you'll get $10 off and free shipping on your first order. That's PONCHO outdoors.com/Gamecock Central. Again, head there, drop in your email, get $10 off and free shipping. Once you try one, you're going to have a closet full very, very soon.
And we'll tell you about RideTech Electric while we have your attention too. Local electrical contractor for residential and commercial all around the Midlands. Over 400 Google reviews, 4.9 stars on average. Every electrician on the team, direct RideTech employees. So no subcontractors. They're not coming out to your home or your business to quote a job and then sending a crew from who knows where to your home or business. Everybody is going to be a direct RideTech employee. They're going to tell you the price transparently before a single wire is touched. Plus, every repair back with a 1-year parts and labor guarantee. So if you've got panel upgrades that you need, tripping breakers, dead outlets, flickering lights, whatever it may be, anything electrical, hit up Steven and his team at RideTech Electric. It's 803-303-8274. A real person is going to pick up. That's RideTech Electric. Appreciate them being part of the show.
For sure. Appreciate all of our great sponsors. And Chris, I'm going to just real quick, I want to be real with everybody on something. Like, because it is football season and because of the number of people listening to these shows and because of you guys, we have had more and more places reach out, and On3 has had more and more places reach out wanting to work with us here on the show. So there will be a few more ad reads during the football season, but as long as I can get away with it, until somebody tells me I have to change it, I have been turning the YouTube monetization ads off on the show. So there may be some more reads, but I am hopeful to balance it out in that at least what we're telling you about are products we have worked with that have a little bit more maybe direct effect on you, as opposed to just the random ads that YouTube may throw in there, if that makes sense. So as long as I can get away with it until somebody over my head tells me I can't, I've been turning those off to at least try to make a better YouTube experience for you guys who watch us here on the live show. Moving on, Kent State. Let's go ahead. We'll talk obviously a ton about them with game week next week, Chris. And they are a team, frankly, if South Carolina was playing Kent State a year or two ago, you are talking about like quite possibly the worst team in college football.
I don't know why. It just cracks me up when you talk about it that way. But they were bad, really bad.
Chris, they were 1-23 over the 2023 and 2024 seasons.
Yeah. And I believe, Wes, let me give a stat here. Now, this is for, I love the sports reference, sports-reference.com. I use that a lot for stats. So I've not looked this up on the official, like, NCAA. Give me some rope, some grace. I haven't gone back and looked at that. But according to this, in 2024, not only was Kent State 0-12, they were 134th of 134 in points per game, 13.9 points per game, and they were also 134th of 134 in opponent points per game with 44. So they scored about 14 points a game and gave up 44 on average. So, yes, absolutely atrocious.
So statistically about the worst offense and the worst defense in the country.
Yes, that's right. So
at the same time.
At the same time, yes. Not good.
That is hard to do.
Hard to do. They did it. But they improved last year. They improved.
Mark Carney, head coach at Kent State, you are a miracle worker. So they go
come on the show.
Maybe. If he hears the way we're talking about him right now, he absolutely will. Because they went from 1-23 to 5-7 last year. And after going winless both overall and obviously in MAC play as well in 2024, dude, they went 4-4 in conference play. So projected to be 10th in the MAC this year by Phil Steele, which still, I mean, obviously not great, but is much better than being projected to be in the basement. So a little bit of continuity there, 10 returning starters. Now, even last year, Chris, even with the improvements overall, they averaged 21 points a game about on offense last year. They allowed nearly 34 points a game on defense. And it's a new team, right? Won't be the same team, but if we're going off of anything from last year, this is still absolutely a team that South Carolina should beat up on. If you want me to give my preview for what Shane Beamer is going to say next Tuesday in his opening statement, it is going to be something to the effect of, for one, this guy's a miracle worker. Mark Carney has done a great job turning the program around. 2, Drew DeShields, who's their quarterback, is a preseason second-team All-MAC honoree. He's a kid who can run it. He can throw it. Had a very high completion percentage last year. Excuse me. Did not have a high completion percentage last year, but had basically a high yards per attempt. Like he was throwing the football down the field in terms of hitting some big plays. And also is just an awesome story because this kid overcame 3 straight ACL tears to rebound and be a starting quarterback in college football. Which you got to tip your hat for somebody for that anyway. And then he's absolutely, as he already did with Tyler Head, going to bring up their kickoff returner, who is on the all-name team for the entire universe, and that is DeRealist Clark, who also a wide receiver, has not done a ton to this point in his career from the receiver position compared to what he's done as a kickoff returner, where he has already returned multiple kickoffs for touchdowns in his career, including a game winner last year. So that is my quick snapshot, I will say, Chris, of what Kent State, what we know about them going into next week already.
Yep. I don't have much more to add. Drew DeShields, 18 touchdowns to 3 picks. So there's another kind of good metric. He did a pretty good job of taking care of the football. So, of course, I agree with you. I think that's exactly what Beamer's going to hit on. In addition to hey, we're going to have to play well. I think one of the things that Shane Beamer is going to have to do over these next couple weeks is this is a much different vibe than if Miami were coming here in 12 days. We all know that. But these are games that, you got to show up, you got to play. There's a lot at stake, not only to win the game, but this is going to be prime time for some of these position battles, Wes. Like, every week you have to go out and perform to hold your position. But I think these first 2 weeks, starting in game 1 against Kent State, I think a lot of guys are going to get opportunities. And so what can you make of them to impress the staff to kind of set you up for conference play to get on the field a lot?
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. So yeah, that's Kent State. That's kind of where things are there. Let's see. Is there anything we did not hit from scrimmage? Running back battle, Chris, I think is still a little bit interesting. It was kind of noteworthy, I think, how the running back battle played out throughout the offseason. Remember all the Matt Fuller hype in the spring. And I think worth mentioning, that was not just behind the scenes. That wasn't just, media oriented. He was the offensive MVP for the spring. So I don't think you're giving him that award if not for, him being a guy who went out there and did really, really well in the spring. It felt like it tightened up a little bit, with all those backs kind of doing some good things. And I do think they still feel pretty good about 4, if not 5 of those guys in the running back room. We'll see if Jabri Coleman, is able to break through and play any this year as a freshman, or if that's more like a long-term thing. But I tend to think, just based on what we've heard, maybe the last 3 or 4 days, like middle of last week into the scrimmage, Matt Fuller, I think, still is probably the guy you would single out as first man up at RB1. And like many of these things, though, and like your point a second ago, it's really going to depend on who goes out there and does it in the games. But it does feel like Matt maybe has the edge here still.
Does feel that way. Feels like Christian Clark is generating a lot of buzz. It also feels like you get some, I don't think a stray mention is the best term, but like you get mentions of the other guys, Isaiah, Jawarn, Jabri Coleman, like they get thrown in there as well. So this is a spot where you feel like you've got some options. There's going to be a pecking order going into game 1. It doesn't have to stay that way. If somebody is getting snaps and they're not producing, or they're, consistently missing blocks and pass protection, you can go to the next guy. I think Stan Drayton won't hesitate to do that. So Matt's had a really big year, like big off season. I think there's been a lot of things that have gone into that. Number one, he's been a talented kid. I think we knew that, but this new offense has him, I think, playing faster. Physically, he looks really good. Yes, he's been in a blue jersey some. That has not limited him, from our understanding, what we've seen, what we've heard. And he's been really productive, when he's been given the opportunities. But he's probably still your front runner. But man, Christian Clark has, he's drawn some pretty strong reviews as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people are kind of in the boat we are right now, and not that we obviously saw Matt last year. We saw Jawarn, and didn't really see Isaiah last year, but we've seen some of these guys play. You can go watch what Christian Clark did in the bowl game for Texas. We've obviously all seen Lenore's play. I think we're at the point where we're just all very interested and excited to see these guys go play in this scheme. Especially after, there was some hype around the offense last week. I do think the defense maybe did take that a little bit personally. I'm not saying they're reading scrimmage reports out there, but the funny thing about the scrimmage reports is all of a sudden they pop up on social media and people start talking about, what happened in the scrimmages and stuff like that. I'm not saying anybody's reading social media for their motivation, but there was no lack of motivation, I think, from what the offense did to set the tone last week. This is a defense that can take things personally, I think. And that's a good thing. That's a great thing. And I think they went out to show kind of who they are. And, I'll be paying pretty close attention to that first week. What does it look like for what does it look like for this group, like this team itself, in terms of starting to take on an identity? Because I feel like if let's take what we said about Kent State earlier, their terrible year where they were worst in defense. And there's a lot of teams out there that maybe aren't great teams, but you feel like, well, if their offense could just get it in gear, but they had a good defense, or vice versa. And, last year, I think we all thought, even with the change at offensive coordinator, until we really started to see the year play out, we all thought with all the guys that they had lost, talented guys from that defense, we were mostly saying, man, the offense is going to have to kind of pick up the slack, so to speak, while the defense comes along. This really became a team that the defense had to set the tone. And, luckily they did, or they would have lost to Virginia Tech as well, I think. I'm very just excited to, in 12 days, start to see what the actual identity of this year's football team is, because no matter how much intel we can gather, and I would dare say, Chris, even if we were watching the practices, like if we had Steve Spurrier level, early Spurrier tenure, wide open, go watch everything, you still would not know what's going to happen when you line up against other opponents. So we are inching ever closely to starting to find out some of those things about this team.
Yeah, and even in the early goings, it's going to be like a ramp up to that, right? Because South Carolina could roll over Kent State and Towson, and we're going to be asking some questions still going into Mississippi State. There's going to be things that we don't know. We'll be asking more questions if South Carolina comes out and struggles in those first two games. But you're 100% right. Like it's always hard to measure a team against a team. I think you can do it to some extent. You can look at a side of the ball and say, all right, I think based on knowing this team and this personnel, I think they got better in this room or on this side of the ball from one year to the other, just from like a personnel standpoint, skill, experience, talent, production. But you have to go out and measure it against real opponents before you can actually tell. And I think that's why it's so tougher than ever in college ball, like to be able to know the team that you cover and that you follow, to have a great sense for it. But then also you think about the fact that, you're trying to go out and study 12 teams and they have a lot of changes and they have a lot of questions and there's more roster turnover than ever. So it's really hard. So that, I feel like that's one of the reasons why, like I'm getting very excited for football season. And I think just a lot of those unknowns and getting some of those questions answered, seeing guys for the first time, seeing a new scheme, like there's a lot of new this year for South Carolina. And I think that has excited the fan base. And being able to maybe potentially, Wes, pair, like you were talking about, can you pair a good defense with a good offense and see what that looks like? Because that's what South Carolina had back half of 2024 when they nearly made the playoff. That's what you've got to have to get to that level. So can they do it? We'll see.
Yeah, if you're going to be a CFP or if you're going to be fighting, like knocking down that door, I don't think you can do it without being pretty good on both sides. Like Now, that doesn't even necessarily mean that's your identity. Like, some teams will just choke you out defensively, and that's how they win, but they still have to be good enough on offense to go make enough plays to win and have enough talent there. And really vice versa. Even teams that maybe had the best offense in college football, you better have some level of ability to stop the opponent. Over the course of a game, you may not stop them every time, but over the course of a game, to let your offense go win the game for you. You know what, Chris? I was trying to think leading into this week, what is nobody talking about, or what topic or just not enough people talking about going into this season that could play a major, major role in South Carolina winning or losing games. And I don't think anybody's talking enough about special teams beyond the kickers. And what I mean by that, like we know you actually bring back both kick returners, like your kick returner and your punt returner. Your punter, Mason Love, who did a good job last year. They have very high hopes for this year. And we've talked a ton, maybe even too much, about the kicker battle. Think about how many games South Carolina won in early Beamer tenure because of special teams being in a position to go make a game-changing play for you. The change at special teams coordinator was Smiley, a guy who comes in after a year at Penn State, many, many years in the NFL, a little bit of just a guy that was maybe unknown in terms of what his approach is to the game and his schemes. Nobody ever talks about special team schemes, but they do matter. And I feel like with all the other things we've been talking about, that one has really not been brought up a ton when you start talking about wins and losses this year. So can special teams be what Beamer has always termed a weapon for South Carolina this year? I think is a storyline that is not getting enough buzz.
I agree. And I would actually turn that around too, because last year we talked with Beamer himself about this like early this year. Last year in the second half of the season, not only did it become like not a weapon for South Carolina, but they actually felt like they lost the special teams battles last year. Charting plays, they have like impact special teams plays. And there were some games in the back half of the season where South Carolina lost that battle, which you're not accustomed to. Typically South Carolina is even or winning the special teams battle, however they track those metrics. And that did not happen a lot last year. So can you get back to that baseline of just being solid there, but then can you do better than that? And can you turn it around and make special teams that weapon like it has been so often, right? Whether it's just great coverage, blocking a punt, blocking a kick, having a big return, right? Those are the things that you want to get back to where you can make those game-changing type plays. Back half of last season, it kind of got lost, right? Just because so much of the conversation was just about the offense, rightfully so. It kind of got lost that South Carolina had lost some of their juice from a special team standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an area that you've absolutely got to get back, because when South Carolina's playing well, that phase of the game is typically doing very well also.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Chris. So one thing we're going to introduce this year every Monday as the season starts is the Modelo Moment. College football season is Modelo season. Saturdays are for the gridiron and cervezas. The fight songs, the fans, and the rivalry trophies are all better with an ice-cold Modelo in your hand. It's not just game day, it's tradition. And those who keep college football traditions alive deserve a Modelo. Modelo is the official beer sponsor of the college football playoff. Drink responsibly. Modelo Especial beer, imported by Crown Imports, Chicago, Illinois. Chris, obviously, we don't have a game to talk about yet. So no Modelo moment. We can mention that we've watched. And I don't know necessarily if I want to do a Modelo moment from a scrimmage we didn't watch. So let's go outside of our footprint. Let's go outside of our bubble. And the Modelo moment for today, the youth movement in SEC quarterbacks. We've been tracking some of these battles. Teams that South Carolina will be facing off with this year have officially named their starters kind of, I guess, the last 48, maybe a little bit before that hours. The the Keelan Russell one sort of kind of started to leak out. Chris Lowe said, I think that was late last week, that he was expecting Alabama to announce him as their starter. That did, eventually happen. Tennessee goes with Faison Brandon, the true freshman as well. And then you have, as I think we kind of expected, Florida going with Aaron Follow, who is not a freshman but has not played a ton. He transferred in, with some of those other guys from Georgia Tech to that Florida offense, with Buster. So maybe, I don't want to say there were some upsets there, but certainly it sounds like some true freshmen really just kept pushing and kept coming along, and maybe is a little sign of the times there, man, where I think if, everybody's going portal, everybody's going older, everybody's saying we want experience. But, Chris, if you have a young guy who you think has superstar ability, weirdly enough, the balance to everybody going 23, 24, 25-year-olds, if you can, is that if you bring in a class and you have a true freshman or a true sophomore who you think is a stud, you also do everything you can to go ahead and integrate them into your current team. And that seems to be the case with all these battles. And again, these are opponents where South Carolina's going to face off with these young quarterbacks too.
And one more to add in there, Wes.
What did I forget?
Carolina goes on the road. Arkansas, KJ Jackson named the starter there. And kind of along the same lines as what you were talking about. Now, he's in his third year in the program. 2024, he was able to redshirt, which is now a thing of the past. But he did redshirt, played in a game. Last year as a redshirt freshman, he played in 5 games, 1 start and a loss against Missouri. He's thrown 58 passes in his career, 3 touchdowns. And so a younger guy still from like an experience standpoint, but he did beat out a transfer. You were talking earlier about the trend being transfers. They kind of went with like the homegrown, like we recruited this guy, new staff, but a holdover from the previous staff at Arkansas. So KJ Jackson, another
Good
guy.
call.
And that is kind of a theme, right? Like there's some guys in here where you're going, all right, pretty young, like talented, but pretty young, pretty inexperienced. Can South Carolina make that matter, Wes? Like can they remember Kentucky game last year? Cutter Boley, who's now transferred since, talented kid, but he came in and you're going, all right, this is this cat's first SEC road start. Can you make that matter? And South Carolina did. So some of these games they're playing at home, some they're playing on the road, but they're playing some young quarterbacks. You do not have a young quarterback. You do not have a young team. Can you make that matter? Can you make it, an advantage for you if you're South Carolina?
Yeah, Golfing True says, if I drink a Modelo for every touchdown scored against Kent State, how do you think I'm feeling after the game? Golfing, I don't know how big of a guy you are, man. I don't know how well you hold your beverages, but I think you will be at least 7 deep by the game if you had a cerveza for every TD. So 7 over 3.5 hours. We'll let you do the math, I guess, on that. Is 7? What's your projected number of touchdowns, Chris, for game 1? You think where would you put that at?
We have to do that now.
No, but yeah.
No, but yeah. Well, I haven't.
I'm not holding you to it. I'm just.
Yeah, I hadn't come up with the final. I mean, yeah, is 7 a good? I mean, that's 49 points. I think you can get there. Yeah, let's say 7.
It just is what popped in my head.
Makes sense. Be good. Be a good night.
Travis says 9. Whoo. Yeah, do not drive home. All right. That's going to do it for today. See, they already got their scores, Chris. Jeff says 42-10, South Carolina.
Ready.
See, Luke, don't do that, man. We have already dispelled that. Luke says when a backup plays against South Carolina, he will play like the Heisman Trophy winner.
That's been killed
no
off.
Evidence for that. Everybody said that when Boley got announced as a starter last year, and he got just absolutely welcomed to SEC football. So anyway, all right, that's an hour. Appreciate you guys being so active. Really excited for the season. Guys, we're almost there. Like pretty soon we'll be talking about a game week, actually previewing a football game, and then soon after that we'll be talking about a game that just happened, which man, we are really, really excited about. So thank you guys for tuning in as always and being active and watching and listening and all the good things. Hey, hit the likes, hit the reviews, hit the subscribes, and we'll see you very, very soon.